Hello, everyone, and welcome to Zenful Conversations. As you can see, I'm once again in my living room, in my little cozy corner, um, without Poetry Poodle today. He's in the other room right now. But we're here. Luckily, today we get to have the conversation with Ellen. Is it Roland?
It's Roland,
Is that how
yes.
you Roland? Okay, great. Ellen Roland. And Ellen is joining us in conversation today. Reminder, these are part of the Summer of Love poetry series conversations, and they are unscripted, unedited, and we're just here to share, to talk, to share. And we don't have I don't really have any notes. Ellen may have, I do actually have a couple of notes. I have a book that I have of yours. I
Oh,
purchased a book of
yay.
yours a while back, everything I thought I knew. And this is where I learned that you live off the grid.
Yes.
So that is my couple few notes. Um, but welcome, Ellen. Welcome.
Thank
So let me
you.
just start it off. I want to start off by asking you what made you say yes to this conversation.
That's a really good question. It was kind of just an intuitive, yes, I don't know. Elizabeth Gilbert, I don't know if you've ever heard her talk about this, but she has this thing called um, a full body yes. Like when somebody asks you something or there's an idea presented or something comes to you and you just say yes, without even thinking about it, that full body yes means that it's something that you're supposed to be doing. So I
Yeah.
really adhere to that. And I think I've experienced it so many times. Sometimes you say yes because you think you should or because, um, society tells you that it's the right thing to do or you feel obligated. And since I'm a born pleaser, yes is something that usually comes out of me pretty naturally. I've learned to kind of rein that in. But when you asked, I mean, we've had a couple of interactions. You've come to my workshop. I've been watching your Zenful Conversations, and I think this is exactly what we need right now. Um, I think people are having a really hard time, not only um, writing, but showing up for any kind of creativity right now, because um, there's the busy mind, but then there's so much going in the world going on in the world right now that we're also having experiencing the heavy heart. And so I think
Yeah.
it's really kind of hard to sit down and create something. And these kind of conversations and being in community with other poets and other artists and people who are sort of focusing on the sacred and what's joyful, I think we all need this more than anything right now. So that's a really
Yeah.
long answer to your question, but
Cool.
I'm really
No,
happy
no,
to
no.
do it.
I
I
appreciate it
just wish I was
because
next to you in that really comfy
there's
chair.
room here too. There's actually room to lay down in it.
This is the next
I
best
mean,
thing.
it's got a dog bed and everything.
Oh,
Um, that's well, that's wonderful because I am I am that full body yes. I feel it and I just go with it before thinking it through because I guess probably my mind would definitely talk me out of some of the stuff. I mean, I wonder sometimes why I don't think things through. But yeah, that's what it is. And I call it an intuitive hit and I just run with it before. But I've always been guided like that. Um, so that's interesting to say that. And I too am a former people pleaser and need to keep an eye on that seed. And it just comes out in a different form. Now I feel like it's now I fill myself with love. And this is now the overflow that comes out rather than giving of myself until I was depleted and broken. Not broken. I don't like to use that word so much anymore, but I definitely felt broken at the time. And so that's all interesting. And yeah, things have been so turbulent here. I'm in the United States, you're in Greece. but things have been turbulent all over the world, and certainly we're all connected anyway. Um,
Hmm.
but I was like, what can I do to help myself, lift myself? And the only thing I know to do is improve my practice. That has whatever it is, the practice. That's how it's just keep dripping at it. Keep nourishing whatever that practice is. And so that's when I decided to just go whole head into this summer of love thing. I'm like, oh, that's it. I'm gonna ask everybody that I know that's a poet if they want to have a conversation.
Let
And
me ask you a question. Have you gotten any no's?
no, I'm actually so full I can't even take any more. I'm booked all the way out through August with
This
workshops and with conversations. But I
this
don't
is so.
expect him to stop because I love it too much. And
Hmm.
half of the challenge with doing things is the preparation and the planning. And this is quite lovely because I'm not having to do any preparation or planning and I get to sit in my living room. So I can't see this
In your comfortable
stopping.
chair.
I don't even have to go over to my studio, which I do with some of the live audience participation we have in the studio, and of course a lot of the meditations and stuff we do in the studios. But yeah, I don't see this stopping because I'm really enjoying it. uh, like I don't intentionally not wanting to research everything about you before we get onto this conversation. I didn't even finish reading a book. I don't finish reading books most of the time. I look through them. Um, and then I probably will once I get to know you. I kind of go back into things like that. Once I feel a little closer, I'm like, well, let me see what she meant by that. But yeah, so thanks for supporting these conversations like that. And thanks for recognizing, because that was my complete intention, is to just increase the energy of love.
Absolutely. And I think what's wonderful about this is that each person that you talk to is most likely going to mention somebody else or somehow in some way lead you to somebody else that you can then contact. So it's like this exponential growth of community that you're also building. And the fact that you're sharing these and the fact that they're free and so many people have access to them, you're also expanding your audience. There are a lot of wonderful offerings that are out there that are just not in certain people's reach. And so it's wonderful that you're offering this to everybody equally.
And it's
So
important to
thank
me.
you for that.
Yeah, thank you too. I just don't, there's so much, like, I don't know. I was looking through I got an email and it sounded like a cool thing, but by God, I had to go through pages and pages and pages of stuff before I could even see how much it was gonna cost, and then it was out of my reach anyway, so it's like, it just don't there's no ulterior motives, and I
Mhm.
think that's really what I love about the space of writers, because I'm coming to this from a therapist perspective. I'm not a writer since I was a kid. I don't have a writing practice even. I do have a writing practice now, but it's not as, deep as it could be or will be, but it's not like I have to write, like most of the writers I'm hearing seems to write. And I suspect we'll get there because I'm starting to have an urge. Oh, I got to write that down, kind of. So the more we practice, whatever it is, the better grip it'll get on us. Um, and then I kind of forget what I'm talking about every time I go off on a little tangent. I don't remember where we were started with that. What were we talking about?
Well, I just, you made me think of something really important that I just would love to say to you, which is that when you say to yourself, I have to write, nothing will block your creativity more. You have to come at it with, I mean, now we're sort of getting into my practice and my philosophy about writing,
Well, no,
but
that was in my notes. I wanted to
okay.
ask you about your practice anyway, so go ahead. Yeah.
So I used to say, okay, I'm going to sit down every single morning and I'm going to write a poem. And I did it. but it was coming from that sort of left brain, I have to do this. And so it felt more like an obligation than to myself as a goal, but I was putting a lot of pressure on myself. And so sometimes what I wrote was good, but most of the time it felt really forced. And then I kind of decided that rather than come from a doing standpoint, I was going to come from an allowing standpoint or sort of an invitation. And when you do that, it takes you into the right side of the brain, which is where flow is. And so to think, I'm going to sit down, but I have no agenda. And if I write the grocery list, if I write a to-do list, if I write about the weather, if I rant about something that I'm upset about, that's totally fine. I'm just going to show up. And so there's this balance of practice in terms of, yeah, I'm going to sit down at my desk every morning for 10, 15, 20 minutes, maybe an hour if I keep writing. Um, so I'm showing up, but I'm not putting pressure on myself about what I'm going to write or how long it's going to be or how good it's going to be. And I'm just going to kind of maybe do a little meditation before, or, some kind of write with my left hand to sort of tap into the right side of the brain, that sort of childlike joy. And then I'm going to see what comes. And it's amazing when you take that pressure off and you invite the writing to come, what can show up on the page. So that's how I've kind of altered my practice. Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
of course it does. Absolutely it does. I remembered what I was going to say because I'm coming at it from a therapist, as a yoga therapist. And the writing is one of the healing modalities across the board, no matter what you're trying to deal with physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever. It's one of the practice, it's one of the, it's part of the plan to sit and write and notice thoughts and stuff like that. So that's why I'm immersing myself in this space, because I do know that's an important step for me to direction for me to go into. I am there is this part of us that wants to produce good stuff though, because I do and I could see both parts of myself in it, and notice it. It's pretty interesting because I am treating it as part of, just as like doing a morning yoga practice, just like doing with the singing bowls outside with the trees, or just part of my everyday breath flow, keep it cool kind of thing for my vibration. It's part of my vibration, my living environment. But and what I mean is, what it could be is I would like to spend more time with it than I allocate to it. But there's this badass part of me that wants to really write something good.
Of course.
And there, this isn't the first time they've done this back and forth with each other.
Well, I mean, we're all our worst critics. I mean, I think what's a challenge is when you're writing. I say this to in almost every workshop that I give, is when you're writing, to consciously say to the editor, or the inner critic, to say, okay, I know you want to have your say, but can you just wait, like outside while I'm writing, and then I'll call you in and we can have a conversation. So just to not judge as you're writing. um, I have a practice that I love, which is just a 10-minute free write, where I try not to let my pen even stop. I just, whatever comes out, comes out. And it's really freeing because you're not thinking about what you're going to write. You're not going back and saying, oh, I should change this word on the page. You're just letting it come out. And that's often where the seeds of some of my best poems have come from, are
You know,
things
you
that,
just said something powerful because um that is what I do is that free write. That's really as far as
oh, that's
I've
great.
gotten.
Yeah.
That's what I do. And I enjoy that. And I would imagine that would be somewhat something that's gonna take place in our workshop, although we haven't really talked about what kind of a style it's gonna be, and it's fine. Um,
Surprise.
so I think what the thing is, well, we're already sold out, which is awesome. Um,
Great.
uh, I think what I'm not. I think it might have helped quite a lot here without even knowing it. I have not gone back and sat with any of these to let this critic or power person part of me have a look and see what they could manifest out of this stuff, you know?
Mm,
So I think if I do give it the time to do that, maybe it won't be so, maybe it'll say, I have give me a chance at this. That's powerful. See?
good.
Look at that. Look at that.
That's wonderful. And sometimes when we give it space on the page, um, it's really interesting to go back and look at it. And sometimes I'll in the at the in the moment I'll write something and I'll think, well, that's not very good. And then I'll come back a few days later and I'll find, even if it's a phrase or a couple words, and say, wow, that has that really resonates, or that's actually pretty good. And then you can take that and sort of expand upon it and possibly turn it into a poem. But you also don't have to put the pressure on yourself to turn it into anything. It can just be something interesting that you learned on the page, and that has its value also. So I think when we set out to write a poem, um, it can feel like a lot of pressure. And other times when I sit down in the morning and nothing comes, and I say, okay, I'm just gonna go do something else. And then what happens is the trickster muse, that's what I call my muse, likes to, visit me when I'm driving the car, or when I'm trying to fall asleep, when I'm really not thinking about writing a poem, and then lines will start coming to me. And so, um, sometimes the words and the things that we need to get out and put on paper don't always come at a convenient time. So we have
Uh-huh.
to let it come when it wants to also.
I can relate in some way by the I do women's retreats in person, and a lot of times I'll be most of the time it happens when I'm cleaning up the house or something like that, and then all of a sudden the whole idea, the whole kit and caboodle will come flying in, and I just stop what I'm doing and writing it down. So it makes me think if I allowed space for those, but it's still you're thinking when you're driving, you're thinking when you're showering, or uh, they're still going to come in at inopportune times, I would imagine, no matter how much space I provided.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you can kind of just accept that, and let it come when it wants to, you can sometimes really interesting things will come out.
It's pretty cool. How many collections do you have? And like how long have you been writing?
Okay, so I've always written ever since I was a child, but it became one of those things that, oh, isn't that cute? So what are you going to have you done your homework? So like, what are you going to study? Um, there was always kind of this put it in a box of hobby or something frivolous. So I've done it, but I almost felt guilty when I would want to give it attention, like, oh, I should be doing other things. And so um, it really wasn't until the first confinement for COVID that I really allowed myself to completely dedicate my time to write poetry. And it was
Wow.
It was fortunate because I was alone because my husband and my children got stuck in France and they couldn't get a flight back. So I was alone for 2.5 months. And in the beginning, I was completely panicked. And then one day I had just this shift in perspective where I said, okay, you can't control this. There's nothing you can do. We're all in this together. How do you want to spend this time? And it just like the full body yes. Immediately the answer was, I want to write. And so I connected to a poetry community on Instagram and I just started writing every day and sometimes for hours. And it was like everything that had been built up just sort of started coming out. I'm not saying that it was all good, not at all. But it just
No,
needed,
but it started to come out, needed to
I
come
allowed it.
out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so it was a very prolific period. I set myself the goal of writing 365 days of haiku first. That was my, and I was also writing longer poems, but I wanted something to do. I wanted a goal, a daily goal. And so that was a really, really interesting practice for me. And I did it. I wrote a year's worth of haiku and I've published 2 books, self-published, 2 books of haiku from that. And after that, most recently, I published another book of haiku and tanka that my husband translated into French. So it's in English on the left side and French on the, because he's French, on the right side. So that was a really fun collaboration with him. And then in 2023, I published my first book of full length poems, No Small Thing, which was published by Fernwood Press. I have an upcoming chapbook that was just accepted a couple weeks ago by Kelsey Books called In Search of Lost Birds. And then I have a full length manuscript that I'm shopping around and hopefully we'll find a home with a publisher. So, um,
Wonderful.
and including the book that you have, which is not poetry, which is essays on alternative education. So that's 6 books now.
Yeah,
And
that's great. That's great. It's see that that isolation there. Uh, you probably couldn't have done it any other way because as a people pleaser, I know these other people come first. Everything else comes first, kind of. So you wouldn't get to that, but you were there alone. It's the perfect. It's what you need for that to
yeah, and
happen.
I
But
didn't
now
have,
it's different too. Now you something happens and you're unblocked because it happened to me too, except I went through yoga as the healing instead of the writing.
wonderful.
I've taken the yoga healing path and around this way to writing. But as I understand it, um, and anyway, it changes us. It changes us. These
Absolutely.
practices change us if we let them.
Absolutely.
Uh, yeah. Um, Once again, forgot the heck I was going to say there. Well, I would like to have you have take this opportunity to say whatever you think is important about using writing as a practice for inner peace or um, about your writing practice or about any of it. Anything that's just wanting to come out, anything that
Mhm.
you, any thoughts that you have?
Um, well, first of all, I wanted to say to you that I think it's wonderful that your yoga practice has turned into something so full of grace for you that you're now teaching others, and that the yoga path has led you somehow to writing, and that they're definitely, like you said, that healing path has so many different modalities that we can choose from. But I think that for somebody who is attracted to the idea of writing as a means of healing, for at least for me, it's been not just a vehicle for healing, because um, I think any kind of writing can be healing. It's just a matter of getting something out. But the form of poetry has been like a container for me that's been not just about healing, but about noticing. And I think haiku in particular is a vehicle that forces us, or not forces us, really asks us to sit in a moment and notice what's happening in nature, and then come back and relate that to the human experience. And so um, it's healing through the act of being aware and being present and being in the here and now, which is also for me a form of meditation. Writing can be very meditative if you're allowing what wants to come through. If that makes
That's
sense.
what it is, being present and noticing. I think that's I think that's it. I think that's the simple I think that's what we would find out at the top of the mountain. I think that that's what it is, just being present and noticing. Yeah, from what I understand, it's not necessarily the poetry, the words, the poem, it's the poet's mind, that's mindset, or the poet's heart that it makes. And yoga is not really the poses, it's much more than that. It's the philosophy, and it to me is all one and the same, because I've been a meditation instructor since 2014, and um they are it is as a healing practice. I did definitely got into this all of this uh, in order to heal. um as a people pleaser, I let things get really out of line and didn't pay attention to myself until I had no choice, which happens to many. And that is what has spawned all this. And then so now these workshops and retreats that I have for women in particular, and um, uh, people trying to come back up.
Yeah.
It's been interesting. It's been interesting. Um, But I will say that I definitely have that poet's mind and the poet's heart. Definitely found my people in
Mm,
this field of writing, in this community of writers, because I'm too sensitive, because I care too much, because I'm too nice. You know what? And in this space, it's not a bad thing.
no,
And you can
it's actually a
trust
really,
that, you know what? She doesn't have an ulterior motive. She's just really there.
yeah.
And I like that I'm allowed to do that without somebody thinking it's an ulterior motive.
Yes, I think that in general, poets tend to show up as themselves. Um, and there's also this kind of understanding. I mean, writing poetry can be a vulnerable act. Um, Showing up to a yoga class with other people that you don't know and feeling maybe not so secure in your body and trying to do poses, that's also very vulnerable. And so I think those two coming together is really interesting. But when you're in a community of people who are showing up and doing these things together, there's this understanding, in most spaces, I would hope, at least I try to create that in my spaces, is that you're safe here. You know, you
Yeah.
can be vulnerable. You can share what you've just written, and nobody's going to judge you. It's all okay. And I think those are really important spaces for people to know they can come to right now, particularly beginning poets, um, people who are just trying to express themselves, to know that they can show up as themselves, in what they're wearing, in what they're thinking, in how they're feeling, and be accepted. And I'm sure that's how
Yeah.
we have similar paths, you and I, interestingly, because you found yoga, or yoga found you, and now you're sharing what you know with other, mostly women, and saying, look, this is what healed me, and now I'm going to share it with you. And it's the same thing with me. I can remember when my husband and I were talking, and he said, well, do you have any projects in mind that you want to do? And I said, I don't know, I feel like I want to do something about sharing poetry. And he said, well, you should give workshops. And again, a full body yes in the beginning. And then, the imposter syndrome comes sweeping in and says, who are you to run a workshop? You don't have a degree in poetry. You don't have a teaching license. You don't have this. You don't have that. Nobody's going to come. Who are you to think you can teach? And it was really interesting because immediately I had this other voice that came in and said, well, I can just share what I've learned. And maybe people will find that interesting. And so that's how I don't think of myself as a teacher. I think of myself as a sharer, or somebody who's accompanying other people who want to write. And so if we think of it that way, we can allow ourselves to do things. Otherwise, we can talk ourselves out of it, right?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I do feel that way too. Yeah, we have a lot of similarities there. When I even introduce myself at the workshops or retreats, yes, I've managed to get quite an impressive lineup of qualifications, and I've actually blows my own mind. And I'm
Mhm.
very, for the first time in my life, proud of myself
That's
for
wonderful.
the accomplishments, because that certified, internationally certified yoga therapist is no joke. Years and thousands. But
I'm
anyway,
sure.
but it was about the subjects that I was learning. But interestingly enough, today is the anniversary, 2017, July 11th, as is recorded, July 11th, 2025, as is recorded, but July 11th in 2017 is when I received my first certification for anything
Well,
in the movement field. um,
happy anniversary.
yeah, well, it's a big deal. Nobody in my family took care of themselves.
Mm,
And I had to hit rock bottom before I cared about myself. Um, and I thought that in 2013, I thought, okay, I'm starting to do it. And I got certified as a meditation instructor in 2014. But not dealing with life circumstances and still having a life. I used to be a pretty high stressed out realtor. And uh, being that I still was absorbing all that stress, um, my body finally said, look, I can't do it anymore. Not just your mind. You got to do something here too. And I thought I was going to have a hip replacement. But the MRI said I just had to move and release stress and tension. So I did. I signed up for the gym. This Les Mills Body Flow or Body Balance. Are you familiar with Les Mills? Um, they had a class there, and was body balance, body flow, and it's like uh yoga, Pilates, Tai Chi kind of
mm,
combined, choreographed to music. And
and
they didn't have any yoga where I was, but that's the gentlest that I could find to do. And so I signed up for that class, and I went to the back of the room. You walk in and hope nobody sees you. And
mm,
but my body really enjoyed the movement. So that's what kept me going because I was 52. Um, very overweight. I've lost a lot of weight. Um, but anyway, so my body was liking it, and I needed to move up so I could see the teacher because I'm back here watching a bunch of flunkies, so I'm not really knowing what she's doing. So I move up and I move up, and within 6 months, I became certified to teach
Amazing.
that class. But in the process, that imposter syndrome thing came in. Um, in the process of that, I've never choreographed anything before. It was really very challenging. It was the most challenging thing I've ever done, was to get that, because I've never not only choreographed, but to have the move, the pose meet that beat when you're exhausted, out of breath, and can't do it anyway because you're 100 pounds overweight.
Mm.
And I remember practicing and practicing and practicing, and I'm just not being able to get this. And my guy Steve came in, and I said, I just don't think I can do this. I mean, I'm 52. I think a woman's got to know her limitations, is what I said.
Mm.
And I said, and even if I get it, who's going to come to my class? I'm big, I'm older, nobody's going to come to my class. And he looked at me and he said, Jen, people will hate you if you're too skinny. And I remember thinking, that's true, because the little Twinkie that was our instructor, I knew I had, as a heavier older woman, I had my little irritation with that going on. Um, anyway, so I got it. I got the certification. I made it through, got it certificate on the first try. And then I had my first class, and it was packed. It was
That's
packed,
amazing.
packed with people that couldn't do it. And they brought their
Of course.
husbands who have never moved. And it was like, it was amazing. It was amazing, and then one step led to the next.
That's such a good example of how society puts so much pressure on us to think that we have to be a certain way just to want to try something. And so it almost stops you from doing the thing that you should be doing to get healthier, because you're not already in the state that you want to get into. Does that make sense? It's this,
Yeah, for
because we have
sure.
to show up to yoga class or hip hop class or a poetry workshop already being a poet, or already being a dancer, already being fit. But that's not the goal at all. The goal is to just do what we're called to do. And so I love that example, and I'm not surprised at all that it was packed,
It was
because
interesting. It made me
it's
happy.
intimidating sometimes.
Uh,
Good
it
for
was
you.
so exciting, so exciting, so exciting. I mean, when
I'm
I
happy
walked
for
out
you.
of there after leading my first class, I walked out of that place. I felt like I could jump on the roof.
Yeah.
I was so
Right.
excited, because that's just
That's
pretty
when
good stuff.
that's when your I believe my that's when your purpose is in alignment with what you're actually doing. And when you're sharing that with other people, and you can actually make some money doing it, or there's some kind of exchange that feels in balance,
Yeah,
that's when you feel like, okay, I know what I'm supposed to be doing.
yeah. I don't have the other parts of the equation yet, but
Yeah. I mean,
but that's all.
I
It's all
always
good.
say with poetry, like, like why have a regular job? Because, you can be a poet and make tens of dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
But
It's not why. It's not why.
no,
And and honestly, I think I don't want I don't want a why like that to change the energy of what I do. But what, I gotta say, I'm not sure I know my why. I don't know if I've known my why
mm,
a lot of times. Back when I was in the real estate, they're like, you gotta know your why. I have no freaking idea why. I felt intuitive to go do it, and I did it. I don't know why on a lot of things. I don't know my why. There you go. I said it. I don't know
good
my
for you.
why. I don't care to know my why.
You're just doing it. That's it. I mean, I think
Just
that's a
doing
great
it.
mantra. I don't know my why, and I'm good with it.
Um, I gotta say though, If you could touch base on this off the grid thing, what does that mean? Uh, I mean, I know you're 100% off the grid. That means you're totally independent, right?
Yes, we do have, we are connected to city water, but that's the only thing. So what that means is that my husband and I restored here in Greece an old stone farmhouse that was completely on the ground. My husband's a sustainable architect, so and we completely renovated it, and so we didn't bring in any other materials. They're completely natural materials. We use wood, stone, and for insulation we use hay. Um, we try to grow 75 to 80% of our food. Um, we have
That's
chickens, eggs.
wonderful.
We use a solar panel system instead of being hooked up to the electricity grid. We use composting toilets, so we're not wasting water. It's
Gosh, that's
basically
so
just it's
great.
yeah, I mean it's as much as we can possibly be, not just independent. I mean, we're pretty much bill free, which is kind of an incredible thing. But it's also about living in harmony with the piece of land that we're on and the people that are around us and the nature that is absolutely incredible here. Um, but it's also, the steps, and that's not to say that everybody should live that way because it's not for everyone.
Mhm.
And the things that we do for sustainability or to bring more sustainability into our lives have to be sustainable themselves. Like we can't set goals that are not reasonable. Not everybody can have a composting toilet. Not everybody can grow their own food. But we can do little steps that can help the planet anyway. So this has been our goal. We've been living off the grid since 2008 when we moved with our two small children to Senegal, West Africa. And we lived there for 8 years. My husband was building with earth and practicing earth building in Senegal. And then we moved to Greece about 7 years ago. So
Wow, that is fantastic. And yay to you.
thank
That
you.
is amazing, 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 amazing.
Thanks.
You mentioned you had a new collection.
I do. I do have a new collection.
Do you
It's
want
a
to talk
book
about it?
of yeah, it's called In Search of Lost Birds, which is the title of one of the poems. But they're all after poems. And for anybody who doesn't know what that means, an after poem is a poem that is inspired by another poet, either a line or a phrase or the title. And I love writing after poems because it puts you in conversation with the poet. And I think that what better form of flattery and what better way to honor that poem and that poet than to take an element of their poem and create something yourself. So there's I don't know, 36 different poets in there who I've written poetry after. So
Nice. I love it.
yeah.
Yeah, I get inspired by, well, I mean, that's usually what this wild writing stuff I do is somebody will read a poem for the most part, and then we write after that.
Be
But I'm gonna
inspired
let
by.
myself go back to that. So do you find that your writing practice gives you inner peace, or is it too much is it professional and it doesn't quite do that, make that soothing
Um, I would
aspect?
say I would say that the act of come in the mornings, one of the first things I do is I sit down with my journal, which is right here. It's nothing fancy. It's just a little brown covered notebook. And I have probably hundreds of views at this point. Well, maybe not hundreds, but quite a lot. And I just sit down and it's my time to touch space with myself. Um, Particularly when I'm feeling in a phase where I'm feeling really busy and I'm saying yes to maybe too many things. And I need to kind of anchor myself to kind of touch base and say, okay, like you can handle this, um, and just sort of listen um, to what wants to come in, and then I just write, and that brings a lot of peace to me. Um, and then other times it feels really frustrating because nothing's coming or I'm just not in the mood. And I give myself grace for that and say, okay, you know what? Today it's going to be a description about my coffee cup, or it's going to be talking about how I don't feel like writing, or how the world feels really heavy and I'm sad about it. Whatever kind of comes out, comes out. So I think I've given myself a lot more room to just show up and maybe not have anything happen and that be completely okay.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I heard Rosemary what told the drummer say not too long ago that, even if nothing is written at all,
yeah,
it's still part of your writing practice. And it's
yes,
really it's about our relationship with ourself is really all it is. And treating that as a kinder relationship, perhaps.
absolutely. I think, what she does is she's one of my favorite living poets. And just her whole philosophy of being, she's so tender with herself, and that comes through in her poetry. Just, talk about Summer of Love. She just embodies that tenderness, even when she's writing poems about her deep grief or, really difficult subjects. There's just this um, grace that fills it. And she's been a big influence on my poetry as well.
She she as well as James Cruz and Julia
Yes.
Fehrenbacher. I mean, honestly, the list can go on and on.
Yeah. And
Um,
that type of poet that is not academic, in the sense that, okay, maybe they've studied poetry, but the point is not to, there's craft in their poetry for sure, but it's mostly about access to the beauty, and access to, and what I mean by the beauty is not necessarily roses and rainbows, but the beauty of touching the truth of, like Rosemary says, it doesn't have to be good, it just has to be true. That's became, when I read that, I was like, okay, that is my all-time mantra for my poetry. It doesn't have to be good, it just has to be true. You just have to be honest with yourself, and I think that's huge.
it is, and it is very healing. It
Hmm.
is very healing. What it being a part of these little writing circles where we do um, the wild type writing, um, I am privy to hearing other people's writings, and I'll say that when I share mine too, I was scared or very vulnerable, but I don't mind being vulnerable anymore. It's actually one of my favorite things about myself is like, okay, look, I
Here, here
I
it is.
already know. I mean, it's like I'm not anything special. This is what I have. Um, and so I don't mind it now that I love myself. um,
Wonderful.
But I'd love the sharing part. It definitely feels like part of the cleansing process. And if I don't get to share what I write, I feel like I didn't really get to release it.
Yeah.
So the sharing is a very, if anybody listening to this is newer and afraid or intimidated by sharing, don't be, because it's beautiful what you wrote anyway. And that's what I really wanted to say is I'm amazed how absolutely stunning these pieces that people write. in just 10 minutes after first hearing I mean a rough draft of scrambled thoughts coming down onto paper. It is amazing how absolutely gorgeous this work is. Um, and I sometimes wonder, well, what's the difference in this compilation of all these 10 people, this whole piece here, and this book of poetry? What is the difference? They're both absolutely gorgeous.
Um, I actually have a poem about this very thing that you're talking about. And what's interesting is that about half of the people who share really beautiful things, including yourself and including me at times, will preface before they read and saying, well, this isn't as good as what I just heard, or I just wrote this really quick. I just jotted this down and I haven't worked on it. And it's just very simple. And then they read it. And sometimes it's so important for us to read our own poetry or have somebody else read our own poetry, because then we can really hear it. And sometimes surprised when we read it back and say, "Wow, it's actually not so bad." It's a. But I would love to read. I have a poem
Yeah, I didn't
about.
even get to any reading, any poetry of yours.
That's
Yes,
okay.
please.
Um,
Please,
it's
please.
about those inner doubts of sharing. I mean, sharing is such a vulnerable thing. It's one thing to get into the practice of writing, but so many people, either because they want to save it, because they think they want to get it published, which I'm not criticizing. It's wonderful to have your work published in journals, um, but even just in spaces like this, or in workshops, or in public readings, it feels so vulnerable to share your work. And we often think, because we don't get feedback on it necessarily, particularly if we're sharing it on social media, like, is anybody reading this? Why am I doing this? And so I wrote this poem. I think I wrote it to myself, to be honest with you. But to kind of remind myself, but I love sharing it with other poets, particularly beginning poets. Um, it's called "Why Bother," and there's an epigraph that's this very short poem by Sean Thomas Doherty, which is, why bother? Because right now there is someone out there with a wound in the exact shape of your words. And the poem says, why bother? Your poems will live lives you may never know about. Travel to places you yourself will never go. Hold meaning you haven't intended. Learn a language you found too difficult to speak. There is a good chance they won't write home or call with news. None of them will send flowers or chocolates or write the sky with the holiday of your name. But just imagine them folded in the front pocket of someone's grief, to be read in silence when everyone leaves, or held at the back of the throat as the first hot sip of joy. Imagine them written in another's loopy handwriting in a book of self that will never be for sale. Imagine at least a few of them living beyond you, both as you and not as you. Again and again, you ask yourselves, do my words matter? Just as someone else is wondering, how did you know?
Mm, wow.
We never know who's going to be touched by our words, and that's why we need to share. We need to put it out there.
We're all just
And it's
walking each other home.
yeah, exactly. And that's what poetry is for, I think, walking each other home.
Now, these conversations that I have scheduled are with some of the people from the circles, lesser known, unpublished,
Mm-hmm.
and not sure about doing it. And then a couple days go by and I'll get an email, I think I'd like to do it. um, uh, so I like that there's a mix of new and published and unpublished and professionals and unprofessionals, and yeah, just the sharing with each other. It's really awesome. I really appreciate you saying yes, not only to this conversation, but to the workshop as well. And
Looking forward
uh,
to it.
yeah, I think that'll be totally awesome. But did you have another poem or anything you'd like to share else today before we?
Um,
Because
let's
we didn't get to any of your poetry really, so I feel like we should have a couple on there if you're interested in reading more.
um, yeah, I can read one that's from the this is from a manuscript that I'm trying to find a home for right now. And it was published in Braided Way magazine, which if you don't know about it, you should discover it. It's Braided Way, I think it's braidedway.org. Um, and it's the idea that spirituality, all different forms of spirituality and religion can become braided together.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, and there's essays, there's stories, there's poetry on there. And it's just a really beautiful publication. So this is one of these poems about that deep noticing. So it's called exuviae, and exuviae means the the outer shell of an insect that has molted. So exuviae. I invited abundance into my life as the guru on the app had suggested, then sat back and waited. But in my anticipation, I failed to notice its arrival as a cluster of white crocus wearing a crown of singing bees. I didn't see the budding olive trees full of golden promise swaying in the August breeze. Regal hoopoes scattered in the bushes, bee-eaters wind-chimed the sky, swallows nested in roof rafters, their young songs unheard, while I wondered when the riches would come my way. Then one bland morning, hanging laundry in the sun, I noticed a cicada's gossamer exoskeleton still gripping the stalk of a dying weed. The insect itself, now high in a tree, clanging its tiny cymbals together, having joined the chorus of lusty heat. When I die, may I leave my own shell behind so easily, attached to nothing, at peace with everything, as I slip out to sing with the others.
Wow. That is nice.
True story. Truth, truth, truth.
Well,
Abundance
that's
is
something else
everywhere.
Rosemary said was she likes to have a twist in the poem.
Sure.
So I've noticed that in both of those. Wow, that is nice. Thank you for sharing that hot off the presses with us.
Thanks.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to say?
Just thank you. And to anybody who's listening, if you are a beginning poet or thinking about writing, um, just give yourself some space and some tenderness and allow things to come through. That's my advice.
Do you have a website or any way to get in
I
contact?
don't have a website, and I
I just
probably
realized
should.
that after I
I
like asked you
probably,
again, I'm like, oh my God, no.
I should, and I should create at least a landing page for myself. I'm also on the brink tinkering, thinking about writing a Substack. But I am present on mostly on Instagram, at Roland.Ellen, and on Facebook as well. If
Okay.
you put those
Ellen
in.
Rowland. That's ROWLAND. And you can always contact me and I can get in touch for you. Ellen does offer a lot of different things. You have workshops from time to time. I know you help poets with editing and um, different things like that. So in case anybody wanted to get in touch with you. And also, if you are interested in the workshop, we're having it on Saturday, Saturday of July 26th, 2025, 11 a.m. Eastern. It is full at capacity right now because we wanted to keep this one intimate. But please, you can always message me if somebody is unable to make it, or if you'd like to be in contact in case something else ever comes to fruition. Just let us know. Please visit zenfulconversations.com. Check out some of our offerings, and thanks for supporting this community. Ellen, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me, Jen. This was
Your
wonderful.
deep wisdom is so present, you know.
Thanks.
You're very, very wise and um helpful. So thank you for sharing your love, your loving energy,
Thanks so much for inviting me on to do so.
and true gratitude.
Appreciate
Namaste.
you. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Namaste. Thank you.
Bye.